What's up, basketball coaches, players, and fans? Welcome back to the Pass First podcast, where we share our knowledge of the game. My name is Augie Johnston. I'm here with my partner, Alex Engel, and we hope you're able to take something away from today's podcast that will just help you in your basketball journey. Today, we're going to be talking about some of our favorite offenses from when we were players and talk about kind of a little bit how that relates to our coaching style and really just give you guys some really cool sets and motion offenses and options at a different looks, so that you guys can add them to your team and start using them as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into today's episode. All right, Alex, today we are talking about offenses from back in the day when we were both players, and I know we'll both share some of our own experiences and some looks that we liked out of each of these offenses. But I guess first question is what offense are you going to talk about first today?
I'm going to talk about the 4-out. We used to call it the Fresno style offense, the Fresno City offense. So yeah, that 4-out kind of motion slash, in some ways, isolation offense. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay, so did you run this as a player?
Yeah, so I ran it when I was playing at Cuesta. Both years when I was there. I don't think we ran it my junior and senior year when I was at Menlo. So I think it was primarily at Cuesta that we ran this.
Okay, so give us a little bit of a breakdown on it. I know you said that it was 4-out, I'm guessing 1 in spacing. So I guess my first question is, where is that big at? Is he strong side ball, weak side ball, or does it even matter?
So normally, the ball would start off with the point guard, and we used to run it with the 4-out where 4 was trailing on the left, point guard's on the right slot. And kind of the 5's job was to just get out of the way of whoever was driving. So if, ball was strong side, the big would kind of float over to the weak side post so that if the point guard drives, they can circle up for that dump down into that layup or dunk area. And that's normally where the big would sit at, but he could flash side to side. We just mainly didn't want the big staying same side as the driver because, obviously it's going to clog the lane up if they're running into each other there.
Okay. And so big staying weak side, getting out of the way. And I know this is similar to a lot of 4-out, 1 in offenses. And I think it's from my experience in running these kind of offenses, that big is able to get a lot of little offensive rebounds, right? Someone drives, his guy helps a little bit, they miss offensive rebounds. So besides grabbing offensive rebounds, what would the big do? Does the big ever get catches in the post? Do you ever post them up?
You could. We didn't a whole lot in that offense because we had other offenses that were more geared towards post-ups. So if we were going to the 4-out, it was more of a guard, oriented offense. We're looking to attack, get into the paint. So like I said, it's not that there was no post-ups, but it was very rare because when I was playing at Cuesta, we had multiple offenses that we ran, and some of them were geared more towards the post. So it's kind of like, okay, if we're going to go to something else, we're probably not going to keep giving it to the post in that situation.
Got you. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So talk us through a little bit of the other, I guess, actions or I guess concepts that you guys would play out of that spacing.
Yeah, so at the time, the 4-out 1 in was real popular when I was playing it. That was late 2008 to 2010. So that was, it was copied all over the country, all over California. I can specifically talk about junior college California. Every team ran it, even if they didn't have the personnel. It was just like the cool thing to do, right? And so we had, again, we had that same thing. But the thing is, every team ran their 4-out just a slightly differently. It was all really copied from Fresno City and their offense, but every team had their own little tweaks to it. And so for us specifically, you were trying to drive either middle or baseline. And if you got baseline, let's say I'm the point guard and bringing down the slot, and I'm driving towards the baseline, if I can score, obviously go up and score. But generally speaking, you're probably not going to get it that easy. So what you're looking to do is you're jump stopping into the paint, or close to the paint as you can. But that strong side guard in the corner usually stays, so that you have someone that you could kick to, right? Because same thing, if you're driving and the strong side turns, which we know for some reason everybody likes to turn and look, there's a kick to a shooter. But if it's not there, you're jump stopping and you're looking to reverse pivot and someone's filling behind you, okay? So the other, the 4, who your trailer is going to fill behind you, so you can kick it back out to them, and then you would filter out to the opposite corner. And then you're back in that 4-out spacing. And from there, the 4 can either attack, they can pass, and, let someone else attack. But the main idea was just to spread the floor. Ours was in a lot of ways more like isolation based, where, some 4-outs, they run like screen away after you pass or something like that. And we didn't really do that. It was just pass it to the open man, and if you could beat your man one-on-one, you go. So it was almost, like I said, like a straight ISO offense, but just with the concepts of 4 out at the same time. And then obviously there was some movement, but we were looking to take advantage of mismatches. If we had a really good wing player that could put the ball on the floor quickly and get to the basket, we were going to try and get him the ball as soon as possible and just be like, go, you can beat your man almost every time. It'll create something for everyone else.
So was there actually a rule in place that said you're not allowed to screen?
Um, I don't know if there was a rule in place saying you're not allowed to screen, but it was like, coach didn't want us to get bunched up, so I don't know if we ever specifically said like don't screen, but it was kind of like known you're not screening because we're not trying to bunch it up. We want to stay as spread out as possible. We would run this against teams that like would trap. We'd run this sometimes to try and spread them out, and then you would just pass out of it, instead of trying to dribble drive every time. But yeah, I can't say that there was ever that specific of a rule, but it was kind of known like, hey, don't go by each other because we want to keep things spaced.
Nice. I remember growing up, and the offense I'm going to talk about has similar spacing, but I think different concepts with 4 out, 1 in. But I remember a lot of the 4 out, 1 in offenses I ran back in the day. We would have 2 slots, almost like elbow extended, 2 wings, and then a post player on the block. And I guess my question is, how was your guys' spacing? Was it similar to that? Was it 2 wings, 2 slots, and a post player, or was it in the corners?
They were in the corners, so it was usually deep corner. Both of the wings were in the, or the other guards were in the corner, and then you had your slot was the point guard on the right side. Your trailer was the 4 on the left side, and then again post was kind of floating back and forth to wherever the open space was. And it was, it was definitely an offense where if you were feeling good that day and you got the ball in your hands, like you knew, like it was fun, because you're like, all right, I'm gonna cook. I'm gonna go get as many buckets as I can, or get into the paint and get as many passes as I can. I can't say I ever experienced that personally, but some of my teammates did, and it was like, all right, let's get him the ball because he's going up for 30 tonight. And it worked really well in those instances.
Nice. Yeah. I love those kind of offenses that give you that freedom to, I mean, that sounds like a ton of freedom, even to like ISO and take someone off the dribble and stuff. Can you think of any specific, actions or looks that you guys got out of it?
Yeah, I think some of the main ones were, like I said earlier, driving and then that strong side coming off, kicking to the corner. As simple as that seems, it's just for whatever reason, a lot of teams, they cannot get their guys to stay disciplined. I think even when you go to the NBA level, you see that, right? So that strong side coming off. Also, if you could get into the middle, right, and you get into the paint, a dump down for a layup or a dunk. We'd sometimes get the reverse pivot because that's another option that is actually open a decent amount, and it's hard to get people to like learn this, but to jump stop, reverse pivot, and kick behind you, and if you're good at filling, you can step into a shot. But again, that wasn't done, I would say, as much because for whatever reason, that just seems to be a hard concept to teach people. Like the kick out is easy, the dump down is easy, but the fill behind, it just, I don't know if you've had the same experience playing and coaching. I have more trouble getting players to do that. And I had the same trouble, I think, with my teammates, getting them to be like, oh, let me fill behind for an open shot.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's actually something that in the past maybe 2 or 3 years in my coaching career, something that I've kind of made a point is that fill behind, right? So we always have like that push-pull system in our offense where, yeah, if somebody drives, you fill behind. And kind of the footwork that we teach with that is like the rondo footwork, where you do like, I don't know what exactly to call it, but when you drive in there and you kind of do like that fake and then you pivot back. I guess it's like the dream shake too, is what people call it too. But that's the footwork that I like to teach, because I've just found that with that you make that fake and then you can see the whole floor, on that reverse. When you pivot back, you can see the whole floor to kick it out to. But I know some coaches don't like it because you're almost like turning your back to the basket. But I guess it's just pick your poison on how you want your footwork. There's probably no wrong answer on that.
There's more rhythm, I think, to that. Where you were like what you're doing compared to a jump stop. I think a jump stop might be like safer, as far as I guess more on balance, less likely to get called for a travel. You could probably see things better, but I think there's more rhythm to like that 1-2 kind of gather into it, where you can get it and then you can turn real quick, and you might even be able to turn and score, at the basket. I think it does give you more opportunities to that, but it's a little more risky as well.
No, I agree. What are some things that you would say that you liked about that offense? I know you already mentioned one or two, but was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
I just like the freedom of it. I mean, it was fun to like you said, just to be like, okay, here we're playing 4 hours, reading off each other, and hey, if I can beat my man, I can beat my man. There are times where that's not the best thing to do, and honestly, I'm not really a big isolation type of guy. Like as far as not necessarily my playing style, but my coaching. Like I don't really want my players just isoing every time because I feel like it can kill the momentum. But there are times where it's like, man, we just have better personnel, so just let them play. There are times where you don't need to run a ton of complex stuff, and you have to be able to, I think, balance those two. So for me, it was fun to be able to just have that freedom, like you said. I think that was probably the main thing.
Yeah, I feel like with an offense with that too, like if you have the personnel, if you have like, a bunch of point guards and guards that can really put the ball down on the ground and go, like you can put an offense in like that and you really don't need too many rules or concepts at all because it's just basketball, right? I mean, they just got to beat their guy off the dribble. And from there, everyone knows how to, make the right read, make the right pass.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like an open gym.
Yeah, it's like spacing, right? Everyone always says offense is spacing, spacing is offense. So, I mean, that's really all you need is some good spacing. And the way you explained it, right, with, a big man on the weak side, short corner, let's say, and then two guys in the corner and two slots, like, in my opinion, that's the ultimate spacing. You can't really get any more spacing than that on the floor. Because, I mean, if you're in 5 out, then the gaps are smaller, 3 out, 2 in. I mean, in that case, the gaps are bigger, I guess, but maybe not bigger, but there's more challenges with the post players, right, in the way and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So it's more clogged up. But okay, so in a minute here, we'll talk a little bit about maybe some of the disadvantages. But first, I'll go ahead and explain the offense that I'm going to talk about. So this is an offense that I ran in high school. It's one of my favorite ones. It's a motion offense, and it's kind of like a mix between flex and motion because, with flex, straight continuity, you make this pass, this guy comes off, this happens, make this pass, this happens. With our offense, and the reason I think it was so effective for us as seniors and juniors was as freshmen, we ran flex. It was pure flex, like to the book. As on JV, we ran flex, to the book. But once we got to varsity, our coach took off all the rules and said, all right, here's some other options. If you have if the ball reverses from the side that has 3 on it to the side with 2, you can, if you want, set a flex screen. But it was already kind of like ingrained into us. So the spacing, like I said, is 4 out, 1 in. We had our guards in the slots and on the wings. But if I was to run it nowadays, I'd put them in the corners and then just have them get open on the wing if they need to. But it was just that. So imagine we come down 4 out, 1 in. I have the ball with the post player on my side, and I'm in the slot, just how you explained. If I reverse it to the other slot, we have some flex action that would happen. And even before that, actually, let me just take a step back. As I come down the floor, ball's in the right slot. I'm the point guard, 4 out, 1 in spacing. The initial action actually was a down screen for the post player. So our post player would play it was a positionless offense, would be a down screen for our post player on the strong side. So he's on that strong side block. And then the weak side would screen away so that you'd have both those entries. So you could enter to the right wing or you could enter to the slot. And if it went to the slot, then we'd have the flex action, possibly, normally. And if it went to the strong side wing, then I could screen away. Our post player could post, lick the post, and get catches. And it was just a motion offense. So anytime you wanted to, you could down screen for the post player. He could back screen for you on the wing. We could run flex action. We can get screen away action. But it was very, very screener heavy. So no cutting, just screens. And probably the reason I liked it so much was because I felt like there was a lot of counters. So when we would, down screen for that post player and they would switch, then the post player would duck in and we'd always get a duck in right there. Or if we would down screen for the post player and they didn't switch, we would always set the screen and flash to the ball, right? Like after you set screen, open to the ball. So we'd always get a lot of post catches off that. And then we would get that flex screen a lot too, because we would just be running it. And then all of a sudden, bam, we haven't ran a flex screen in 5 possessions, but just automatically would happen. We would get that. So, yeah, I don't know if I explained that well enough, but that's the offense that I liked. As far as other things that we got out of it, like I said, flex screen, and eventually, we had the options to set flare screens, back screens. I mean, like I said, we'd been running it for so long that we could really do a lot of things out of it. Um,
Did you feel that because you guys, when I'm thinking of the traditional flex, it sounds like that was more of like the way you started it was a little non-traditional to get into the flex system. So did you feel
yeah,
like because of that, it threw teams off where they're expecting this, normally when I've seen flex, it's like you got two on one side, three on the other, ball goes across, screen across, block to block, from the wing to the block, and then a down screen. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I've generally seen it as, where it's like screen across and screen down, and then the same action goes, and it's just back and forth, flex, flex, flex. So because yours was a lot more non-traditional, did you find that it made it easier because, or maybe not easier, but maybe more deceptive because teams would be like, okay, we don't really know what they're running. Then bam, all of a sudden you're hit with a flex screen and you got a layup. Like, did that help a lot, you think?
yeah, I think so because I mean, you've ran flex. I'm sure everyone's pretty much ran flex. Flex is an offense that I actually love. It's a great offense, but I feel like it's a first half or first quarter offense because by the end of the game, I mean, if you're only running flex, like they're just going to switch whatever they need to, or just jump the screens. So I felt like, yeah, with this freedom, it opened up that flex screen a lot, and um, a lot of teams would prepare for us as if we were running flex. And so they'd just work on guarding that all day. And then all of a sudden now we're setting these other screens that aren't normally part of flex, and just running counters. We would have different calls that we could make to, get the ball to a certain spot if we wanted to, like, reverse it, flex screen, instead of, me setting the down screen for the flex screener, he could set a back screen for me, and then we would get it over the top real easy and stuff like that. So, and I'm not sure that it's an offense that I could just like put in with a club team and be like, all right, you know, we practice once a week and this is what we're going to run. I think it was so effective for us because of the progression. Like, I mean, me and you have coached and tried to teach flex screens here and there. And it's hard for players to come down the court and recognize, oh, I'm the post player. Oh, the ball's on the strong side. If it goes to the other slot, I need to set the flex screen. They're normally like just posting up and you're just like, set it. And then the guy that's supposed to cut through, you're always like, cut. It's hard for them, to recognize it. But the fact that we ran flex freshman, sophomore, and actually even on some other club teams, and then all of a sudden, bam, all right, motion offense, here are a bunch of different, UCLA screens. He taught us a whole bunch of other kind of screens, flare screens, screen aways, that, we were able to get that flex screen naturally and easily. Let me see. So, and as far as what I really liked about it is I always felt like I never felt like I was running like a set. I never felt restricted or anything. I always felt like if I had the ball and I could drive, I could drive. If somebody was denied, I could backdoor. And so it was a motion offense, but I would say just a little bit more structured than saying, all right, here's your spacing. You can pass, screen away, you can cut, you can set a back screen, a little bit more structure than that because of that flex screen. So, all right. Let's see. And also one last final note on that is it's a great offense for us because we were positionless. We had maybe one big guy that came off the bench. Everybody else could play on the perimeter, could catch the ball, make ball reversals, and stuff like that. So, as far as why don't I run it? Well, we do run something now very similar because we have a more positionless team coming up next year, but I haven't really had a team that was as positionless as we were in high school to run it. Therefore, haven't ran it yet. But I mean, with all these offenses, I feel like you can make tweaks, right? Let's say you got 6'8" guy and you're running the offense you guys are running, more of like a dribble drive, 4-out spacing. I mean, you could dump it into him, you can say, all right, actually, when he's strong side, just dump it into him. But
Mhm.
just change year to year. So, all right, let's go ahead and talk about some of the disadvantages then of these offenses. So I'll let you start first. I know you've mentioned one or two, but what is like one of the first thing that comes to mind?
So definitely it can get stagnant, right? If you're just passing and trying to ISO, and let's say the other team's doing a good job of containing, or you're just not being able to getting in the paint really well, then the offense can get stagnant because it's just one-on-one, everyone else watching, right? And it can kill momentum. I have seen that happen. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things there. The second thing would be if you're, it is an offense that, generally speaking, you're not just like ripping and getting to the rim and scoring layups. I mean, you hopefully, I mean, that'd be great, right? But normally it's not that easy. So normally you're getting in and kicking out. And the problem is it can become a very 3-point heavy offense, which I'm not against shooting 3-pointers, as you know, but if it's like, okay, hey, we've just chucked up 7 threes in a row off driving kicks and we've missed them all, well, that's not really helping us, so we might want to try something a little different. So I would say those are two of the main things that come to mind. And just kind of touching back on one thing, you said it earlier, I totally forgot. We used to run this offense a lot against teams that switched everything because they couldn't switch anymore, right? And if you take that, there's no screens, so there's no switching. So now it's just, can you beat your man? And again, sometimes it would work, but I think, like I said, the biggest fear, and I know Coach would get upset sometimes. It's like, hey, you guys are just completely isolating. And now we're not getting anything out of it. And so now it's just as bad as if they were switching on us, because it really doesn't make a difference. So,
Yeah. Was there ever a time when a player would make a cut in that offense? Because I feel like with that spacing, you need at least some kind of cut at some point to create like that double gap.
so as I then transitioned from a player to coach with the program at Cuesta, we did start to incorporate that, and I know now they have incorporated that, but at the time, not really. It was pretty just straight up like play. I mean, and again, it wasn't like if you cut that, coach would say don't do it, but generally speaking, he wanted a space, and so I think we just kind of all stayed spaced, because of that. And on the flip side, like when I was a player there, we had a lot of success. So there weren't many teams that we had struggled with. It wasn't like we won the conference both years. So obviously what we did was working. But I know there were some games where I remember we ran it and there were teams that just stopped us in it. And now thinking back on it, I'm like, yeah, we probably should have had a cut or, a screen away or something else in there. But at the time we didn't adapt, unfortunately. But like I said, hindsight's always 2020. So.
Yeah. And also too, I think it's good to cut or screen away to create that double gap, but then at the same time, now, not everybody's set in a position where they, might need to hold the corner, right? If he drives, if someone's screened away and all of a sudden it's the corner kick, even though it'd be the other side.
Right.
If there's a screen or something happening, then no one's spotting up there. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay. I would say one of the biggest disadvantages for the offense that we were running, this motion offense, was probably shot selection. A lot of times, it's the worst 3-point shooter that the other team leaves wide open. And when you're running motion or any kind of offense that's not really like a set where you're looking to get somebody the ball, you're really at the mercy of the players making the right decision on shot selection. And you got to make sure that your worst shooter isn't the one that's wide open every time. And that's one thing that I'm thinking about this year. I mean, we have a lot of good shooters on our team, but we have one really good shooter who, when we're going to run some kind of motion type offense, and I'm like, man, is that the right move? Because we need him shooting, 5, 6, 7 threes a game. So if he's not going to be able to get off, 5, 6, 7 threes a game in this offense, then it might not be best for us. But I'm just banking on the fact that we got a group of guys that know how to play, find the right guy, through driving kick. I think he will be able to get those shots.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes I feel like when you try and isolate for a guy and be like, oh, we got to get him shots, it ends up not working out for you. And a lot of times I feel like the more natural just playing and finding people open works better. Not at all levels, but I think generally speaking, unless you have a really high IQ team that can get that person open every single time, you end up forcing stuff or turning it over or whatever. And you're like, dang, man, I'm trying to get him the ball and now everything's going the exact opposite.
Yeah, everyone turns all robotic, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you're well, I guess in any time you're playing basketball and you run a pick and roll big with little, and then they switch and you're like, oh, everyone's like, we got to get it inside,
Yeah.
give it to the big, mouse in the house, but then they end up just turning it over, trying to throw it
Yeah.
in there.
Right. They get so
So
excited and they're like, "Oh, I got to throw it right now," and throw it at his ankles or something. It's turnover.
yeah, or like, yeah. And I remember when we had a 6'8" guy that was our leading scorer one year, we saw that a ton. Like we would be like, feed the beast, like if no one was passing to him. But then it was like, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like it just has to go to him naturally. Like you can't,
Hmm.
I mean, even in those situations where you're like, all right, we're running a set, it's for him, like give it to him. And then you come out and run, and then he's all of a sudden we run the set, but he got pushed out to like, the mid post, and now all of a sudden, okay, give it to him. Well, now he can't do anything with it.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay. Let's see. So we talked a little bit about both of us talked a little bit about like a motion type offense. Let's talk about maybe a set that we liked. I know this is gonna be a little tricky to try to explain on using audio, but we'll just do the best we can. So what is like one set that you could talk about that you liked as a player?
Yeah, so we ran a set in high school that I really liked, and it basically started out as a 4-out high, like a 1-4 set,
Okay.
um, and the way that this set worked was it ended up being a shot for the point guard, but it was based off of deception, and I believe it was Coach Barakoff who we had on the show.
Yeah.
So if Coach, you're listening to this, you're going to know what I'm talking about here, because I'm pretty sure this was your set. And so the ball would get dumped in, and we called it flash. Okay, and the ball would get dumped into the high post. Okay, so both bigs, on the high post, and you would dump it in normally to the left side, high post big, and then immediately the point guard would come over and kind of sprint over to the right side wing. Okay, so ball gets dumped over here to the high post, sprinting to the right side wing, and they're calling out screen, okay, screen, 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 like the guard's gonna, like that wing is gonna come off a curl, but instead
Mm-hmm.
of coming off the curl, that wing defender takes a step and then just cuts back door. Okay, and what would happen a lot of times is both players would get so nervous about the back door that they would both run after that wing player, like just for a split second,
Mm-hmm.
and all that took was time enough for the point guard to turn and face that high post, to fire it over, and you're wide open. I mean, I saw sometimes where literally both players guarding that wing player would run down to like the paint, and you'd have like 10 feet of nobody around the point guard because they would get so confused. Um, it didn't always work out like that, but there were a lot of times where players got wide open shots off of that play. And yeah, I just remember it was more when I was, like I think freshman, sophomore year that we ran that. But it was a good play, and even at Cuesta, I put it in at one point, and it still worked even at the college level, which surprised me. You think like, oh, higher level guys, they're not going to fall for that, but it's just that there's people get so nervous about that back door that once that fake comes and boom, they go back door, all of a sudden guards right there wide open. But you can only run it a couple times a game because they catch on to it pretty quick.
Do you ever get the back door?
Um, I don't remember it happening a whole lot. I mean, I'm sure you could, but it was more based for that point guard to get the shot. So I think even if unless it was just so wide open, most of the time, the players are so zoned in on getting the ball to the point guard, that they're probably not even thinking about it.
And what
So
about the other high post player? If you go to the left guy, does he kind of just get out the way, or?
yeah, he kind of has to just like step back a little bit, to kind of create some space, just so that pass can come across. Just steps back a little bit. That's why I said like that pass back door um, could be crowded depending on where that other high post player is, and this is how I remembered running it. And like I said, when I incorporated this, how I ran it, maybe Coach Barakoff would say, "Oh no, we didn't have him there. We had him somewhere else." It's one of those things where you might have forgotten how exactly it was ran.
Yeah.
Um, but that the main idea of that, ball going to the high post, coming over, setting that screen, going back door, and getting the ball to the point guard, that was all part of that set, and it worked pretty well. So
Yeah, I could definitely see that working. That's misdirection.
mhm.
And one thing I just wanted to mention was I love that. I love like 1-4 sets because like you can do so much out of them, right? I mean, there's like an endless number of sets you could run out of them. And I've seen teams run that as like their base offense. It's like a 1-4 set every time they come down, and they got so many cool little options, a lot of backdoor options and stuff. And I've considered, going that route too, and saying, all right, I like it so much because it just pulls all the defense away from the basket. I mean, everyone's above the free throw line, but for me, it seems challenging to get catches every single time down the floor, right? Those high post catches are not super easy, and the wing ones either. So, I mean, I don't know what kind of turnover ratio that would create, but that's one thing
Yeah.
that I would worry about.
I've seen some teams do some really good stuff out of, and usually they must, they work on it a lot, but toss to the high post. And then as soon as the high post turns, they catch and they turn and look at the wing that's closest to them. So let's say they're on the left side, they turn and look at the left wing. And as soon as they turn and look at them, that left wing goes back door. And it's just a real
Mm-hmm.
simple layup, and teams that are good at that, they get it 3-4 times a game, just easy layups. But you got to have the timing down. Like you said, you got to have the catch, all of that's got to be, they obviously work on it a lot.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Okay. I guess I'll talk about one quick set that gets us wide open threes. This is a zone set, and it's the wheel. So I don't know if you ever heard of the wheel. And the wheels can be ran and actually is a few different offenses nowadays. But this one that I'm talking about is to get a corner three. So you are, let me think, the spacing is 4 out, 1 in on the 4 out, 1 in. So you have 2 slots, 2 wings, and a post player. And the post player is actually weak side. So for this one, we'll say the ball's in the right slot. And the way you run this is you throw the ball to the wing. So now it's on the right wing. That player cuts all the way through to the corner, the opposite corner. So now he's in the left corner. And then the other slot player works to get open. So he pushes, into the paint or down under the 3-point line, breaks out, gets a catch right at the point. So the ball reverses from one wing and then to the point and then to the other wing. And as soon as the point reverses to the other wing, he now cuts through to the same side corner that the other guard cut through. So he's sprinting now, head under the basket. He's going to go out to that same corner. So we're really just overloading that whole entire side. And right when that player gets to about head under the basket, that wing player attacks middle. So he attacks middle. That player that was already in the corner lifts up to the wing, and then you kick it right back to him. And then the bottom guy of the zone has to cover the wing. And then the last cutter that was filling the corner pops out to that corner. And the only way to guard it is if your middle guy in the zone, if you're running a 2-3, comes out to the corner, which then you have the post player right there to dump it into. But I swear, man, that play, we ran it last year, like, I don't know, probably like 3. If teams would zone us, we'd run it at least 3 or 4 times a game. Every time wide open 3, it was just a matter of if we can make it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's one set that actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I never ran it as a player, but it's just a set that I want to talk about. So
I might have to steal that one to you. That's from you. That's a good one. I like that.
yeah, it's actually, we run it as a set, but I think there is an offense too, like more of a continuity type one where you just got guys cutting to the corners. But that the whole thing about the player driving from the wing to the middle just kind of shifts the whole defense, and then you just kick it back, and you can always get some. But yeah, that's a play. Okay, so let's keep this going. And the question I guess now kind of arises: so why not just look back at your playing career and run your favorite stuff that you ran as a player, as now that we're coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a few different reasons. One is the personnel that you currently have. It may not match up with what I ran, at the high school, college, whatever level it was. We may not have the same personnel. I think especially when you're looking at like the college level where you can recruit and you can get what you want, it's easier to formulate an offense around that. Cause you're like, okay, well, this is what, these are the type of players I'm going to recruit so I can have my set offenses. At high school where you don't have that much, recruiting power, if any, you kind of have to adapt with the year that with the teams that you have as they come in each year. Now you may have your basic ideas and your basic philosophies, right? But you're going to have to tweak things as you get different personnel coming in, I think. I don't want to say you got to reinvent the wheel every year, but it is a different situation. Also, too, some of the offenses that you run, maybe at the college level, they may be too high IQ for you to put in with the high school or lower middle school, whatever level you're at. And I, generally speaking, so far my experience with the high school kids is they actually can run quite a bit of stuff more. When I was coaching in college, I was like, I don't know if high school kids can do this stuff. They can actually do more than you realize. But you really got to spend the time with them. And I do notice it takes longer for them to pick up on stuff. So you just got to be willing to put that in. But on the flip side, like compared to like junior college, where you only get them for 2 years, in high school you get them for 4. So you do have more time to work with them, you know? So I think you can still get kind of complex, but again, just that personnel, I would say, is the main thing there. And then the second part is, and I guess you said favorite plays, but just in general, like there are some plays that I didn't like, you know, so I don't want to keep running those as I become a coach, because I didn't like every offense. To be honest, most of the offenses I played in, I didn't hate them, but I didn't love them. I was just like, okay, this is what we're running, so I'll run it, you know? There are very few that I was like, wow, I really like this offense. This is what I want to use for the rest of my career.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think a lot of it too, like, what do you like as a player? Oh, well, I like the offense where I'm getting shots or I'm getting the ball
Right.
at least, like if if you're a post player and there's some offense where they just put you down the short corner and you never touch it, like that's not going to be your favorite offense. Your favorite offense is going to be the high-low one, or whatever,
Right.
where you can touch it. But yeah, and I think just to add to that too, with the evolution of the game and stuff and players being able to actually make threes now, I mean, like, I don't know about you, I'm a little bit older than you, but back when I was in high school, you'd have like one shooter on the team, or you'd have like two guys that could shoot threes, and like then you have other guys that were like, okay, they're they could actually make one if they're wide open, but like you don't really want them ever to shoot it. And then nowadays it's like I look at my team, like we track. We're doing a lot of shooting right now, so we track all their shooting. Like we have, let's see, we have like four guys that are making like over 70 out of 100 threes. I mean, this is just a shooting drill, but
Hmm.
like that's actually really good. 70 out of
Hmm.
100 is what I was like, basically what I was doing when I was in college. And looking back on my high school team, we had probably one guy that could do that. And so yeah, the game's evolved, and so now we're running offenses where we're looking to shoot threes more than when I was in high school, where it was almost like, not taboo, but I want to shoot 20 to 30 threes a game. Like I want to shoot probably around 20 threes a game.
Hmm.
And back then we were probably around like, I don't know, 6 or 7. So
Hmm.
I guess that's changed. I mean, I just drew up a play right now for a three. I don't think we even had too many plays for threes when I was playing. So
And like you said, even though we played in a similar time period, um, we actually, because especially my junior and senior year of high school, the coach that I had shot a lot of threes. So we were, I would say, ahead of our time as far as how many threes we took. Now, I'm not saying we made all of them, but but we took a lot of threes. And we had one shooter that was like a knockdown. I mean, it was Dylan.
mhm,
And who was a Division 1 shooter and one of the best shooters even at the Division 1 level. But so he obviously was allowed to just green light everything. Um, but the rest of us, we were all pretty much able to take open threes as well. So we shot a lot of threes. But I think, as you said, like we probably didn't really have the personnel to be shooting that many even at that time period. Like you're saying you have four guys shooting 70 or more. Like I doubt, I'm sure we all had one. But we were still letting them fly because that was our coach's philosophy, because he was a 3-point shooter when he was playing. So I think we actually attempted a lot, but I would say that probably the percentages were not necessarily great.
mhm. Yeah, and it all depends on, even, I mean, we're talking about, oh, nowadays people shoot more threes and stuff, but it totally depends on what team you're on, right? I mean, I can think of like Morro Bay last year, boys basketball. They weren't jacking a lot of threes up because they had pretty good post players. They had slashers, that kind of thing. But then another school like Napomo, who was also in our league, like they were jacking up more threes than anybody, and they were effective with it. So I guess it does totally depend on your personnel.
Hmm.
So okay, I guess it depends too at the high school level. Like, what kind of emphasis are you putting on shooting? Like Santa Maria High School here locally, like they put tons of, like, just like Napomo, tons of emphasis on shooting. Um, and so their offense is going to reflect that, obviously.
Well, and
So,
that was my head coach. Remember at the time, that was my head
oh, that's
coach.
right. I was going to ask you
So
who it was. Yeah.
yeah, so Coach Amade was my head coach. Now he's the head coach of Santa Maria High, but he was my head coach at Morro Bay my junior and senior year. So we were already shooting all those three. And now now it's even next level. Like they're shooting so many more threes even than when we shot. We were kind of like the test dummies for it at the time, and now it's really their philosophy on everything. So
Yeah, that's cool. He's a progressive guy, and I like coaches that are willing to do stuff like that to the extreme. I respect it because you're going to get criticized for it a ton. Like I'm sure so many times people come to, even to the Santa Maria games. Oh, what are they doing shooting all these threes, like just criticizing him. But he's sticking to his guns, and that's what he's doing. And I mean, a couple of years ago, they got second in the league. They had a solid year. And,
Mm-hmm.
with that kind of philosophy, you definitely either got to develop them or get the shooters.
And there is still a large push from like older, if you're just talking about people that either played or even just parents or people that grew up around the game, that are a little older. And 3-point shooting wasn't a thing. Like you'll hear it. They'll be like, oh man, we just shoot too many threes nowadays. Like too many threes, and I get it to an extent. I agree. I do have like some agreement where there are teams that really have no business shooting that many threes and they just do it, and I think, like you said, you got to know your personnel. But same time, if you have the shooters, like you also want to use them. Should you only chuck up threes? No, but like if it's a large part of your game, like you might have that personnel that makes it work. I mean, last year we took a decent amount of threes, probably more than most teams, especially in our league. And nobody really made a big gripe about it, but I know I heard some whispers here and there about like, oh man, they just shoot so many threes, like da da da. But I'm like, yeah, well, we got girls shooting like 40% from three. It's like if she's gonna shoot 40%, I'm gonna let her shoot it. So I think it just kind of depends. But it's funny how you see that generational gap of like, oh no, threes are not good, because some people grew up without even having a 3-point line.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, we all know that it comes to a certain point where, you don't want to shoot yourself out of it. That's for sure. And, you can have all right, yeah, well, look at our team this year. Okay, well, we're going to be shooting threes, 23s. Yeah. And then you start playing games and you're losing because you're just shooting yourself out of it. So you got to adjust to that. So,
Right.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add about a few of your favorite offenses?
No, I think we covered about everything on that.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits of being a player and then coaching someday is that you can look back and kind of say, hey, I remember my experience in, playing for this coach and having to, whether it's an offense or a defense. For me, like one example I think of is like no middle. I always talk about this no middle. Like, to what degree are you not allowed to give up middle? Because as a player, when I played on a team where if you gave up middle, you were coming out and it was over for you. Like, I didn't like that as a player because I felt like I couldn't even guard my guy. I was just trying to not let him go middle, So I that's one thing that I've looked back on and said, okay, we want to force baseline, but if he goes middle, that's fine. Just don't let him get into the paint. That's basically our rule. So, Well, all right, guys, that's all we got for this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked today's episode and are watching on YouTube, please subscribe there. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, you can follow us there as well. We release a new episode once a week, and we hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you in that next episode.